Hello BookTube, it's Amy. It's been a little while, but I thought I'd pop in to show you a few books here that were pulled from my grandparents' attic just last week when I was down in New York visiting them. And if you follow me over on Instagram, you may have already seen these, but I thought I'd bring them to a video on the channel here and show them under closer inspection. So this first one here is probably my favorite. It's this white leather with these garlands of pink roses. It is a little bit dirty on the back. We've got a speck of something and a small water stain. But overall, it's not in bad condition for having sat in that attic probably for the last 20 years at least. The box that had these items would have gone up there 20 years ago, right around the time of the passing of my great-grandmother, because this book was one of hers. And we have these lovely white end papers with the green garlands. And if we open it up here, you can see it's called Rose Garlands from Tennyson by Couples and Leon Company in New York. And you can well imagine that this would have been given as a gift, perhaps at a special occasion of some sort. But it's full of these glossy images of roses and lines from Tennyson. And I'll just show this last image. I kind of skipped over it, but I like this as well. It's just there on one of the front pages here. But we open this up and we have lines, Maud, the princess, Geraint and Enid, and the whole thing is just full of images of roses. Roses in different colors, different kinds of roses. I do like the yellow ones. Now, of course, roses are my favorite flower, which I think is quite suitable given that Rose is my middle name. But this was just a beautiful, beautiful find, up in a box with papers and photos of various kinds. And I don't recall at this point in time whether there was a date in it, but certainly this would have been from either the late part of the 19th century or the early part of the 20th century. I'm seeming to remember that there is a date in it somewhere, but I could be remembering one of these other books. Just based on the illustrations themselves, I am thinking perhaps 1910s or somewhere thereabout. And there we have that. I love these images. A rose of grace, girl never breathed to rival such a rose. Rose never blew that equaled such a bud. And there is a girl sitting in a window here, reaching up to some roses. And we have that same image to close out the book. But yes, I am seeing this is the one that didn't have a date in it. But the other books do. And I would guess they're all from about the same era. This one's in quite rough shape. I haven't made any attempts to repair it yet. But this is a birthday book. And there's two birthday books here. And these are from the late 19th century. And they contain quotes from their respective authors. So this one here is a Dickens birthday book, and this one here is a Longfellow birthday book. And they have spaces for each of the dates of the year, and the idea here is that you would write down the birth dates of your friends, your family members, your acquaintances in order to remember them. So this one, our cover is completely off. Our front pages are completely off. But here is our title page, printed in Chicago. And we begin with January. We've got quotes from Longfellow, Woods in Winter. January, chill airs and wintry winds, my ear has grown familiar with your song. I hear it in the opening year, I listen and it cheers me long. And so we've got that throughout. And we have, you know, the names and birthdays of people from the 20s into the 30s here. So I'm guessing this is when this one was filled out. We have some from 1912 here, and I don't know any of these people. It does appear that it was kept for quite a while because we have different handwriting. We have one that says 1908 here, and well, we've got someone named Harriet Sanderson, who was apparently born in 1912. Sylvia Pike, 1911. A Philip Arbuck, 1937. And there is the name of my own great-grandmother, born 1908. And I think it's rather neat. Let's see if this one has a date here. Once again, there's no publication date in this one. It could be that this one is early 20th century, just by the dates in there. But this one certainly is a little bit older. And based on the names here, I do wonder if perhaps this one belonged to my great-grandmother. And maybe this one belonged to my great-great-grandmother, because it is older. And we do have the name of a bridge here. And I suppose that could be a relation of mine. And it says Merry Christmas, 1884. And so this is the Charles Dickens birthday book. And there are some illustrations here. I can't say I'm a big fan of the illustrations. But we open it up and we've got a title page that says the Charles Dickens birthday book compiled and edited by his eldest daughter, with the illustrations by the youngest daughter. So I guess I just criticized the illustrations of Dickens' daughter, if indeed this is accurate and correct and not just a publishing scheme. But here we have published 1882. And we have a dedication to nephews and nieces. An editor's note here. In compiling this book, I have made use of some more serious extracts than generally appear in similar collections, but I have done so with a purpose, namely, there is not one such extract which does not teach, both to the old and the young, some lesson either of mercy, of love, of charity, or of hope. And teaching such lessons, they will not, I believe, be considered to be out of place in this Charles Dickens birthday book. And it's just signed MD 1882. And our first January page is falling out. But there are passages for each day of the year. January 1st, New Year's Day, the best and happiest day, he says, in the whole year, and one that is almost sure to bring good fortune with it. Ever by day and night, under the sun and under the stars, climbing the dusty hills and toiling along the weary plains, journeying by land and journeying by sea, coming and going so strangely to meet and to act and to react on one another, move all we restless travelers through the pilgrimage of life. And it's a shame that there's no labeling of these extracts. And so you would have to be a real connoisseur of the novels of Dickens, I think, to be able to identify each of these passages. But the birthdays entered in this one certainly are for those of an earlier date. And based on the inscription here, I do believe this one belonged to an earlier ancestor of mine. Perhaps my great-great-grandmother, or perhaps my great-grandmother's aunt. And so one of my earlier family members would have had the Dickens birthday book, and my great-grandmother would have had the Longfellow's birthday book in the early 20th century. My great-grandmother was a very interesting woman. She was married 3 times and lived into her 90s, and she had a wonderful, wonderful collection of family photographs that I really enjoyed looking through when I was visiting my grandparents' house down in New York. And then this final one, is not part of her collection, but it is something that my grandpa had on his shelves. And he showed it to me last summer as a little curiosity. This little leather-bound volume. It just says Nature on the spine. But it is a educational treatise of some sort. I suppose it's called the Catechism of Nature. And I guess it is a catechism of sorts, in the sense that it does, provide questions and answers between a tutor and a pupil. Whatever it is, the Catechism of Nature for the Use of Children by Dr. Martinet, professor of philosophy at Zutphen. It says it's translated from the Dutch. And there's our title page here. And it is a heavily religious text. I haven't read through it in full, and I probably won't. I did skim it a little bit. But there's questions on, the nature of the planet, questions about nature. Now here's one. What are vapors or clouds? Vapors are either thin, invisible, moist particles which float in the air, or being more condensed, and by that means rendered visible, are called clouds. This work of the Creator was observed of old. He bindeth up the waters in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not rent under him. And it's a series of things like that, questions about aspects of nature. And you could well imagine this would be given to a young student based on the reading level. I would guess, maybe this would be introduced somewhere between the age of 7 and 10. Certainly for a child of that age is perhaps one of the, and I'm noticing we've got a little bit more damage than I noticed at first, just in the spine here. But it is still, bound and well intact. But you could imagine this would be, perhaps for someone who doesn't own very many books, a core text in their education. And I'm just noticing on the back here, I think this might be the trail of a bookworm here. That's certainly what it looks like. Something has burrowed in and had a little bit of a snack in the book. But those are 4 of the books that I brought back. There was one more, but I didn't bring it over to the camera because it's not something that you wouldn't have seen before. It's just a Luther small catechism that belonged to my grandpa. He's no longer able to read the small text in it, and it's very similar to the one that I used in my brief stint in confirmation classes when my family was a member of the Lutheran Church. And so I thought, just for sentimental and nostalgic purposes, I would take that copy with me. It's certainly preferable over the other copy I have on my shelf, but I thought it is kind of nice to own my grandpa's copy of Luther's Catechism, because I do have a number of other books that he's given me over the years, and I do like to build a little bit of a collection of, I guess, books and items that have come from family, You can probably see only the cowbell is in shot, but there's a cowbell. There is a collection of smaller bells, one shelf up, that belong to my great-grandmother. My grandma had them in her living room. She passed them on to me. I, of course, have a collection of Shakespeare, passed down several generations in the family. A children's book, passed down several generations in the family. And I was very, very pleased to be offered these to bring home to my collection and to preserve this little bit of family history here. And this little bit of, I guess, interesting literary history. I had never heard of birthday books before, but evidently they were something that must have been fairly popular. Something that you might give as a gift, I suppose, or buy for yourself. Certainly more interesting than having, just a plain blank notebook to keep track of birthdays. To have that literary element, perhaps of your favorite author. But that's all I've got for today. If you've held out 16 minutes into the video, thank you very much for sticking with my channel. And I'm sure I'll be back in the next few days with something more.